Hello, and you're watching the History Fella channel. In this video we're looking at the First Battle of Springfield. The First Battle of Springfield was a battle of the American Civil War that took place on October the 25th, 1861, near Springfield, Missouri. Following the Battle of Wilson's Creek, the Missouri State Guard, a pro-Confederate militia organization, drove north and defeated a federal Union force in the siege of Lexington. Following the fighting at Lexington, Federal Major General John C. Fremont began a campaign that drove into southern Missouri. The main body of the Missouri State Guard fell back to Neosho, but a body of roughly 1,000 new recruits commanded by Colonel Julian Frazier was at Springfield. On October the 24th, Fremont sent a force raised as his bodyguard commanded by Major Charles Zagoni on a scouting mission towards Springfield. After joining the cavalry force known as the Prairie Scouts at Bolivar, Zagoni moved on towards Springfield on October the 25th. Having lost the element of surprise in a clash with a small group of Missouri State Guardsmen, Zagoni detoured his men to the west. At around 4 p.m., Zagoni's men encountered Frazier's command. The Missouri State Guardsmen had taken up a defensive position on a partially wooded ridge. The exact details of the battle are unknown, but Zagoni's men drove off Frazier's troops before entering Springfield and withdrawing north at around the time darkness fell. Zagoni's post-battle report was intentionally inaccurate and was designed to inflate the contributions of his own troops at the expense of the Prairie Scouts. The action accomplished very little, and Federal troops occupied Springfield again 2 days later. Fremont was relieved of command in early November, and his successor called off the campaign and withdrew, allowing all the Missouri State Guard to reoccupy Springfield, although they were driven out of Missouri in early 1862. Early in the American Civil War, conflict broke out between United States Federal Union forces and state authorities in Missouri. On May the 10th, 1861, Federal Brigadier General Nathaniel Lyon captured a militia encampment sent by Missouri's pro-Confederate governor Claiborne Fox Jackson in the Camp Jackson affair. Jackson responded by creating a new pro-Confederate militia force, the Missouri State Guard, and named Sterling Price the Guard's commander. Price, Lyon, and Jackson attended a meeting at the Planters House Hotel on June the 11th, at the end of which Lyon declared that a state of open war had begun. Lyon then began an offensive that took control of the state capital of Jefferson City and drove the Missouri State Guard from the Missouri River Valley. For a time, federal operations in Missouri were part of the purview of the Department of the Ohio. But on July the 1st, the Department of the West, which included Missouri, was created and placed under the command of Major General John C. Fremont 2 days later. Fremont arrived in Missouri on July the 25th. He brought with him a number of foreign-born officers, one of whom was the Hungarian Major Charles Zagoni, who recruited a cavalry unit intended to serve as a bodyguard for Fremont. While Fremont focused on events near Cairo, Illinois, Lyon operated in southwestern Missouri. On August the 10th, Lyon was killed and his army defeated while fighting a mixed Confederate States Army and Missouri State Guard force at the Battle of Wilson's Creek. While the Confederate forces returned to Arkansas after Wilson's Creek, Price moved his militia north to the Missouri River town of Lexington. Fremont's response to Price's incursion was ineffective, and the siege of Lexington ended with a Federal surrender on September the 20th. In response to the fall of Lexington, Fremont developed an unrealistic offensive plan that involved a thrust all the way down to New Orleans, Louisiana. His force outnumbered Price about 38,000 men to 18,000 men. As Federal troops gathered at Georgetown, Missouri, Price fell back, pursued by Fremont's army. On October the 20th, Price's men reached Neosho, Missouri, while the middle of October saw Fremont reach the Pomme de Terre River. Leading part of Fremont's advance had been Major Frank J. White and his Prairie Scouts, a cavalry force drawn from 2 companies of the 3rd Illinois Cavalry Regiment and one from the 23rd Illinois Infantry Regiment. As the advance neared Springfield, Missouri, the bodyguard unit led the offensive. Late on October the 24th, the Zagoni and the bodyguard left camp to move towards Springfield. Reaching Bolivar the next day, Zagoni joined forces with the Prairie Scouts, although White was sick and followed in the carriage. Defending Springfield was a collection of new Missouri State Guard recruits commanded by Colonel Julian Frazier. The historian Lou Gertes states that Frazier had an effective force of around 1,000 badly armed and trained men, although Zagoni believed he faced 2,000 to 2,200 enemy soldiers. Zagoni led about 300 men in his movement, while still 8 miles away from Springfield. The Federals ran into a small party of Missouri State Guardsmen, one of whom escaped back to Springfield to sound the alarm. With the element of surprise now lost for an attack from the north, Zagoni swung his troops to the approach of Springfield from the west. Unaware that Zagoni had changed course, White later arrived from the north and was captured. At around 4 p.m. the Federal cavalry encountered Frazier's position, which was on partially wooded ridge. To the north of Missouri State Guard position was a road. To the south was a lane with fences along the sides, and in front of it was Crane Creek. Zagoni aligned his men for a charge, and according to historian Robert E. Miller, Zagoni told his men that any who did not want to participate in the attack would be excused. Miller also states that Zagoni gave Fremont and the Union as a watchword, although the historian Stephen Z. Starr does not believe Zagoni's claim to have been used in this battle cry. Writing of the ensuing engagement, Starr states that the truth of what happened in Springfield on this October day is lost beyond recovery. And Miller notes that Zagoni's account of the action was intentionally inaccurate to glorify his troops at the expense of the Prairie Scouts. Gertes describes the sequence of the battle as Zagoni's men, accompanied by Captain Patrick Norton and the Prairie Scouts, destroying the fence to make a path for their charge while under Missouri State Guard fire. With the attack driving Frazier's cavalry into Springfield and Frazier's infantry into some woods. Gertes then has Zagoni's men pursuing guardsmen through the streets of Springfield, with Zagoni gathering his scattered men before dark, deciding that he did not have enough men to hold the city, and then withdrawing back north. Miller's account of the battle has 2 companies charging with Zagoni through a gap in the fence, while another company, commanded by Captain Foley, had to tear down a portion of the fence to attack. Miller then has Foley repulsed in the charge, and Zagoni's column driving off Frazier's cavalry, but then being repulsed by his infantry, and a third charge driving off the guardsmen. Under Miller's account, the guardsmen fled Neosho, with Zagoni's men entering Springfield but withdrawing north towards Bolivar at dark, having abandoned his wounded. The historians Philip W. Steele and Steve Cottrell described the battle as an unsuccessful charge by Zagoni, followed by a secondary successful one, and then the Federals chasing the Guardsmen through both Springfield and the surrounding rural areas. Zagoni claimed after the battle that the Prairie Scouts had not participated in the charge, but the official report of the Prairie Scouts states that 2 companies of that unit fought under Captain Charles Fairbanks near the Missouri State Guard's rear and made 3 flanking attacks against Frazier's line. Evidence also points to Norton's company fighting with Foley, and Foley reported that a portion of the Prairie Scouts fought with his command instead of Zagoni's 2 companies because of a misunderstanding. Zagoni's report also claimed that he had raised the United States flag in Springfield, but Miller notes that there is evidence that suggests this is inaccurate. Zagoni admitted to a loss of 15 killed, 27 wounded, and 10 missing in action. A post-war second-hand account written by a Confederate officer, William Preston Johnston, claimed that Frazier had only 2 or 3 men, or had lost only 2 or 3 men. Miller notes the existence of a federal claim that Missouri State Guard had lost around 116 men. Steele and Cottrell state that the bodyguards suffered 53 casualties and the Prairie Scouts 31. Zagoni's official report claimed that at least 106 guardsmen were dead, with 27 captured and more wounded. The report also stated that 45 horses that had been killed or incapacitated during the action, that the men's weapons had been seriously damaged by enemy fire, and that the Federal troops' uniforms and spare clothes had been so riddled with bullets as to be useless. Preservationist Francis E. Kennedy places Federal losses at 85 and Frazier's loss at 133. The fight had accomplished very little, but it was celebrated in the Federal press and known as Zagoni's death attack. George Boker wrote a poem about it, and Fremont compared the action to the charge of the Light Brigade. Federal troops occupied Springfield 2 days after the battle. Previously, Fremont had upset the federal government with the impolitic Fremont Emancipation, and political troubles dogged his campaign. Accusations of contractor graft during the mobilization of his army, opposition from supporters of Francis Preston Blair Jr., and a negative report from Adjutant General of the U.S. Army Lorenzo Thomas made the situation worse for Fremont. He was relieved of his command in early November and replaced by Major General David Hunter. Hunter called off Fremont's offensive and withdrew from Springfield, allowing Price to reoccupy the city. About a week after taking command, Hunter was reassigned to Kansas and replaced by Major General Henry W. Halleck. A federal offensive in early 1862 drove Price out of Missouri, and the Battle of Pea Ridge in March 1862 secured federal control of Missouri. Fremont and Zagoni were assigned east to what is now West Virginia and fought in Jackson's Valley Campaign. Zagoni left active military service in late June 1862. In the city of Springfield's Zagoni Park is a 1931 monument commemorating the charge, although the accuracy of the text on the monument has been challenged. If you found the information in this video informative, please feel free to give it a like or a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel.